G'day, it's Mark and welcome back to the channel. And in this episode, we look at the Chrysler Valiant AP6. The Chrysler Valiant AP6, AP standing for Australian Production, was produced from February 1965 to March 1966. The car was available as a four-door sedan, a five-door station wagon, and a two-door utility. Engines varied from a 225 cubic inch or 3.7 litre 6, the slant 6, or new for the AP6 and first for an Australian manufacturer was the availability of a 273 cubic inch or 4.5 litre V8 engine. Transmissions included a 3-speed manual on the column or a 3-speed automatic. The V8 was only available as an automatic. Dimensions of the AP6 were length 187.9 inches or 4,772 millimetres. That applied to the sedan, these measurements. A wheelbase of 106 inches or 2,692 millimetres. Width 69 inches or 1,753 millimetres. Height 55 inches or 1,387 millimetres, and a curb weight of 1,245 kilograms, that's for a 6-cylinder model, or 2,744 pounds. The Valiant AP6 was released in March 1965, and it replaced the Valiant AP5. Now, if you check out my episode on the AP5 Valiant, you'll see that I made some comments around which looked more modern, the AP5 or the AP6. Check that out if you haven't already. But the AP6 replaced the AP5. The basic styling of the AP6 was carried over from the AP5, but the differences included a new split grille, a new bonnet, and new front mudguards. Mechanical changes included a redesigned camshaft, the introduction of self-adjusting brakes, and the replacement of the push-button gear selector on models fitted with the automatic transmission by a traditional lever system. Optional power brakes were made available across the range. A coupe utility variant was added to the range for the first time in April 1965, and this was marketed as the Valiant Wayfarer. This was the first Valiant coupe-based ute to be produced by Chrysler Australia. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about Valiant. So obviously there was a Chrysler Wayfarer in the previous Chrysler Royal body, and that was made prior to the Valiant. And as per the previous AP5 Valiant, the station wagon models had some variations in the rear styling, and that depended on the production timing. So the early build wagons used the 1965 US Plymouth Valiant wagon style rear tail lights, and then later in the production run, Chrysler Australia invested in new tooling for the wagon rear sheet metal because they were just importing the panels from the US prior to that, and this allowed the use of the sedan rear doors. Later style wagons also used vertical style tail lights, and the new pressings required revised rear cargo area side windows, and the rear bumpers were also redesigned. So when you're looking at an AP6 Valiant wagon, the most obvious differences are where the rear bumpers on the early build cars end. They lead into the pressing on the lower rear quarter sheet metal, whereas on the later build cars, the bumper has curved ends with a flat sheet metal surface on the lower rear quarters. Exciting news was the release of the V8 engine, and that was done in August 1965. And a V8 sedan and a V8 Safari wagon were both offered. And this was powered by the 273 cubic inch or 4.5 litre V8 engine. And that was fitted with the Torque Flight 8 automatic transmission. V8 models could be identified by their V8 badges, with the V8 sedan having a vinyl roof and the V8 Safari wagon being fitted with a roof rack. Power-assisted brakes were standard equipment. Although the car utilised the Regal trim in terms of the sedan and equipment levels, the V8 was not marketed as a Regal. It was simply marketed as Valiant V8. I reckon these are a tremendous looking car. I'd love to have either a sedan or a wagon. I love the wagon. The sedan was probably fitted out better than the wagon in terms of the bucket seats and so on. But either car would be terrific to own. And, I know I spoke about the AP5 styling versus the AP6. But overall, regardless of what I think about the modernity or otherwise, I think the AP6 is the best looking of the two Valiants. And the fact that you could order a V8 engine was just icing on the cake. So as I said earlier, the AP6 Valiant was offered in a 4-door sedan, a 5-door station wagon, and a 2-door utility, and it was available across 10 models. There was the Valiant manual sedan, which was the AP6-2, the Valiant automatic sedan, which was the AP6-4, the Valiant Regal sedan, the AP6-4H, the Valiant V8 sedan, AP6-4PV, the Valiant Safari wagon manual, which was AP6-2W, the Valiant Safari automatic wagon, AP6-4W, the Valiant Safari Regal wagon, which was AP6-4WH, the Valiant V8 Safari wagon, code AP6-4WHV, the Valiant Wayfarer manual utility, AP6-2U, the Valiant Wayfarer automatic utility, which was AP6-4U. In terms of the engines, as I mentioned earlier, the 225 cubic inch or 3.7 litre 6-cylinder engine, the Slant 6, was fitted to all models except the Valiant V8. And the 273 4.5 litre V8 was obviously fitted to the Valiant V8 sedan and wagon. The fact that Chrysler offered the V8 was pretty amazing when you consider, only 2 years earlier, a top-of-the-line Holden EJ Premier sedan had 56 kilowatts or 75 brake horsepower. And now you could go just 2 years later to a Valiant V8, which had 180 horsepower or 134 kilowatts. Like, it's a massive increase over what was available before, more than double. Also, with its relatively lightweight body, the V8 models actually had fantastic performance, and they felt unusually light and agile and quite ideal for Australian roads because, again, it was a compact car in the US in terms of the Plymouth Valiant, and so the width of the car was ideal to what I guess Australians were used to, and it was very easy to navigate that on our local roads. The 273 4.5 litre V8 was also state-of-the-art, and it incorporated thin wall casting that also slashed the engine weight to within 22 kilograms of the 6-cylinder. Chrysler Australia also took advantage of the V8's shorter engine length and moved it back in the engine bay. And this made sure that handling wasn't compromised compared to the 6-cylinder. And as per what Chrysler Australia did with the AP5, there was concern with the local engineers here that the boot area was not big enough. And so that's why the boot lids on the Australian AP5 and 6 were raised up to the same level as the fins on the Plymouth Valiant in the US. And also the fitment of a heavier rear pillars, which gave a more formal upmarket look, but also a flat rear window, which also reduced costs. Also, unlike the Plymouth Valiant, the rear wheel arches weren't squared off. They were left more rounded, and that provided easier access for wheel changes, particularly given that we had the larger 14-inch wheels fitted to our cars, but also for some consistency between the sedan and the wagon. The AP6 really presented itself very nicely. It had a very similar front end to the American Plymouth Barracuda, and I think with the availability of that 273 V8, also available in the Barracuda, and the bucket seats and the console with the T-bar or the floor shift automatic, it really did have some US pizzazz about it. And speaking of interior, the Chrysler interiors were very, very nicely done. Beautiful seat trim and door trims, and it really did set the standard, I think. Having said that, though, if you looked at a Futura or you looked at a Premier, they were certainly nicely appointed as well. But the fact that you could then step up one level again with a V8 Valiant, with that floor console, the vinyl roof, and the V8 engine. I mean, that's a massive improvement over its rivals. It really did set the Valiant as a step above, I think, the local Ford and Holden rivals. It's also worth pointing out towards the end of the AP6's life, Ford also upped the ante with the introduction of the Ford Fairmont, and that also had the bucket seats, but again, still no V8 engine. So it really wasn't until the XR series in later '66 and the introduction of the ZA Fairlane that Ford then regained, and I guess in the case of the Fairlane, surpassed what Chrysler had made available on the market. But Chrysler certainly had a very, very strong entry point, in amongst that big three competition. And these cars are also very, very sought after today. I mean, all the big three cars are, but particularly these Valiants in V8 form. And if you can find yourself a V8 wagon, I mean, grab it. I mean, those things are rare. One feature I particularly like is the black and white steering wheel. I've always liked white steering wheels on cars. I think they look pretty cool. A lot of the old Mercedes-Benz had the white wheel, and I think it looked particularly upmarket. The early Fords had them as well, but the Chrysler had the black and white steering wheel, which was a very nice touch. I mentioned before that the Valiant V8 wagon, the Safari V8, it didn't offer the bucket seats. It was deemed that, because it was a station wagon, the focus should be on carrying capacity, both passengers and luggage. So it had the Regal style front seats. It had a column mounted transmission, so it allowed for extra space for passengers. Also the Regal side garnishes, the rear dust deflectors, and a center luggage rack was also bolted to the roof, and that distinguished it from the base wagons. I did have a question from one of the subscribers around the 273 V8, so I'll answer that here. So the 273, that was fitted with a 2-barrel Carter carburetor, and it was the first in the family of Chrysler LA V8s, in the first of the family. And it was a lightweight engine, as I said before, with thin wall casting, and also had a wedge head combustion chambers and valve inclination as well. And so eventually that LA engine was later boosted to the 318, the 5.2-litre V8. In terms of other changes made for the fitment of the V8, cooling was a concern, so a larger capacity radiator and a 6-blade fan were also specified. There was a heavy-duty rear axle and springs that were also fitted, and that was also upgraded and matched to upgraded front torsion bus suspension settings. Brakes on the V8, although they were power boosted, they were finned drum brakes. And so the brakes were barely up to, I guess, the power of the vehicle. And so it wasn't until the following model, the VC, where disc brakes were offered. Total production at the Tonsley Park plant in South Australia was 43,344. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode on the Chrysler Valiant AP6. If you haven't already, please check out the other Valiant episodes, the R Series, the S Series, the AP5, and also there's a lot more other episodes on the channel, including a Falcon playlist, a Fairlane playlist, and a Commodore playlist, plus a lot of other videos. Please hit that thumbs up button. It really does help the channel. It doesn't cost you a cent, and it does make a big difference. Plus also, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on a future episode. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.